be about necessarily hospice care, the palliative piece, but I can put them in touch with some of my great colleagues throughout the industry.
Well, great. And hang on to your phone number, and maybe Teddy can also put that in the notes. If somebody's watching and have concerns about themselves or friends or relatives, we're happy to put them in touch with you so they can get the support that they need. But Robert, again, you've lived an interesting life. You've done different things. So, and you've got a great story to tell. So what we'd like to do is kind of dive into that now. Sure. And I suppose that one of the first things when you talk about change is that fear of the unknown, and conquering that or stepping outside your comfort zone. Talk about that a little bit and sort of how that process unfolded for you.
Well, for a long time, and just a little background, I'm 25 years being a Winston-Salem resident, and I love it here in North Carolina, originally from Texas, and moved here. I was in the resort business, the high-end conference resort business, and there were different things that were happening in my life, and I wanted to change. Something told me that I needed to change in my life, to go in a different direction, to test my talents out a little bit. And as a matter of fact, I remember walking into your office many moons ago, and you gave me a suggestion, and there's where our relationship has started. But yeah, I think everyone's scenario is different. You talk about what's happening now with especially the COVID, the pandemic, kind of dictating people, oh, what am I going to do now? What about if I get furloughed? It's a scary situation now for a lot of people, but yeah, certainly in diving into it, I will tell you that it's kind of like that kid that decides to go from jumping off the edge of the pool to going over to one of the boards, the low board or the high board.
Robert, I'm going to get a picture of you right now. There you go. A picture in a picture. So you made the change, and you don't make change in a vacuum. Whether it's family, friends, you've got people who depend on you, you've got financial obligations, you've got a whole host of things. So walk us through a little bit about some of those decisions and the trade-offs as you began to look to make that career change.
Well, I think you have to do a serious reevaluation of yourself, where you want to be. Believe it or not, I was younger at one time, and we were always trying to climb that ladder, right? Trying to get the next raise, trying to get to the next position, trying to get something different on that business card. And all of a sudden, I found myself reevaluating, what do I really want? What's important to me? Is it always money? Is it peace of mind? Is it quality of life? I will tell you, in the industry that I was in the conference resort business, if I did a 65-hour work week, that was a slow week. And finally dawned on me that I was overworked and I was looking for a change. So yeah, you need to reevaluate yourself. You look at things, and certainly money plays into it, but you have to take a look and see your budget, for instance. Until I did these changes, I started realizing that I really didn't have a budget in place. Can I live with less? Can I tighten it up here, tighten it up there? And lo and behold, I did. Sure, you have to bite the bullet a little bit, but in the long run, if you're happy where you're at in a job, if you're passionate about something, it'll come to you. And just challenging yourself, asking yourself about the role that you would like to take in a particular company or in a business. So yeah, it's a lot of things going on, and like I said, everybody's scenario is different. At the time, I know when I was talking with you, I was single, and so it was, and my children were older, and so it was probably a little bit easier, but nonetheless, there were some hurdles that I had to overcome. So I certainly don't want to sound like it applies to everybody, but I think everybody can take a hard look at themselves and give themselves more credit than what we sometimes don't give ourselves.
Yeah, I think I use the term comfortable rut. We get stuck in the day-to-day. We know how to do our job. We're not necessarily in danger of losing our job. We just do our job, and nothing's perfect. No job, no person, nobody's perfect. but you kind of get into that rut. Next thing you know, it's, 25 years have gone by or more.
Yeah.
And so that self-awareness, I think, is important. You mentioned something earlier this week about the phrase, your talent can travel. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I found that until I changed careers and changed jobs and so forth, that all this knowledge that I had, or these talents that I've obtained, and certainly that I've obtained to myself, but also at wonderful people that I've had the opportunity to work with over the years, that I'm able to use these talents and apply them to something else. And I used the analogy with you the other day. It's just a different bicycle. You don't
Yeah.
realize it's just a different type of bike. And you go, hey, this kind of coincides with what I used to do, or the way I manage people, the way I constructed budgets, the way I set schedules, whatever the case might be, you can apply it to this. And if you have certain talents, they will carry over. They will travel, believe it or not. And it doesn't have, we have a tendency, Randy, as you well know, to put ourselves in a silo. And I think we do ourselves a serious injustice at times.
We can. We all have talents, and understanding what those are. I mean, just as we all can do our job, but maybe we don't realize that those skills can, in fact, transfer somewhere else. And we can talk a little bit more later on here about how you convey that during an interview, how you can try to convey it on a resume and so forth. But that's not easy. And part of the reason that I wanted to have you on here was not just the inspiration piece of, hey, you know what, I did it, you can do it, that kind of thing. Teddy's done it, I've done it. We've all at some point made a change, whether it was a very purposeful one or it was sort of like, hey, you know what, I could do that, and just kind of go in that direction. Too many, I think, people fall into something early in their life and they never leave it unless it leaves them. And that's what's happening a lot now with furloughs, layoffs, and it happened about 10 years ago when the economy took a pretty big crash. Another thing that I think kind of holds us back is our pride. We're very prideful, and quite frankly, a lot of us anyway, our self-worth and our value that we deem for ourselves is based in large part on the role that we hold in the business community, especially for professionals. And to lose that or change that, it's tough. Talk about that pride issue and some of the things you went through.
Well, from a pride issue going, okay, I've stepped down from a certain role and I've taken a couple of steps down. We sometimes think it's embarrassing, or it's a strike against us, or, oh, what's our colleagues, our peers in the industry going to think? And so far from the truth, it really doesn't matter, because your true talents, your true you is going to come out in no matter what role you're in whatever industry you're in, and the people that maybe you're associated with. I've been able to not only have my talents travel with me, but the people that I knew and all the community things that I do, I've been able to tie them in with my new roles and to introduce them to my new roles. And they're like, wow, Robert, I didn't know you were over there. Great. I know this about them. And it all mingles. And we sometimes think that, oh, I've lost my place in the society level or something. And that's the farthest from the truth. I think it's real important. Several things. One is, I think you need to make a list of what's important to you. Make it in an order and really take a long look at it. You mentioned something just a minute ago about how we sometimes neglect things, or I'm going to say we sometimes neglect things. And one of the biggest things we neglect is family. I know in my jobs, my family took a back seat, and you can't get those years back. You can't get those ball games, those volleyball games, those school functions, all that. You can't get it back. And sometimes, and so that was a real big determining factor for me. Even though it passed me by, I thought, no, now's the time to change. I wish I had made the change sooner, to be quite frank with you.
Robert, you reminded me of a story when I had hair. This was a long time ago, back when I was a headhunter, an executive search guy up in Ohio. And a friend of mine, actually a coworker named Bob, who I think he was a regional manager for a fast food chain. And this guy was traveling constantly, hardly ever home. And he had a tear in his eye when he told me this. He was having breakfast one morning, and his young child came up to him and said, Daddy, you know what day it is today? And Bob just like, what? And she goes, It's my birthday.
Yeah.
And he had no idea.
Yep.
And that was the day that his life changed. And he ended up getting into recruiting and then started his own business. And he had the business knowledge, the transferable skills, but you know what? Just like you, 65 hours a week was, that was an easy week. This guy was never home. So, many people have done it. I think that whole first step is a tough one. And I'm not one to jump out of airplanes, but it's kind of that same thought as once you take the first step, you're out there.
Yeah.
And in that case, there's no coming back. But anything and you're laughing, Teddy. I know you made a very conscious change.
Yeah, and I remember as Robert was, and the story of the Bob guy, and Robert's talking about not having time with family. I was on an airplane every week for years. I mean, I'm talking about for 10 years plus, and I remember a couple occasions that I knew that it was time to make a change. One occasion was I was flying around the country, and I was in Vegas, and one day I decided to go to a high-end hair stylist and get my hair done and my beard trimmed almost to nothing. In those days, this was regular, okay? So I had my beard trimmed and hair done, and I came home, and my youngest daughter freaked out because she didn't know who I was. Okay? That was one example. The other was, back in the days when I worked 80 hours a week for a company, and and didn't care about anything but doing the job right. I remember hearing one of my daughters. I have 4 daughters, Robert. Hearing one of my daughters say to my wife, "I don't like Dad anymore." That was very telling, and that was the catalyst for me to make another career change. And I've made 4 or 5 serious career changes. As Randy said, most of them very purposefully.
Yeah. And mine was pretty purposefully too. And I was an old radio guy. And and I've got the microphone to prove it right here, but, and the face for radio, but we had twins. They were 3, 4 years old. And just to Robert's point about climbing the ladder and moving to a larger market and so forth, and we're staring at a life of moving around, much like in the military, for example. So it looked to make a change, and where those transferable skills would play well, the ability to speak, convey ideas, to write, to sell, those things sort of played well with moving into recruiting. And at least in recruiting, I always felt like if you could find talent, you could train them, you could hire them, that would be a skill that could play anywhere in the country, any industry, any geographic area, any economy, up, down, whatever. Companies need good talent. And over time, I found the component of recruiting that I enjoyed the most was the coaching of not just the candidate, but also the company to ask good questions so they could make good decisions. And over time, then that sort of morphed into helping the candidate, the job seeker. And I love it because, I'm not trying to steer them somewhere so that I make more money. I'm here to help them be happy. Whatever that looks like for them, if I can help along that way, then that's great. Plus I get paid by goodwill, and it's a good thing. So,
and I think in just what you're saying, Randy, it's one of my points that I'm making. I'm reading my points here. You need to uncover a passion. When I hear you talk, you're passionate about what you do. And sometimes we lose that passion maybe in our roles, and we have to uncover passion, maybe take a look and see, wow, this is something I've always wanted to do. Maybe I wanted to work in nonprofits. Maybe I wanted to work overseas. Maybe I wanted to travel and I never did. I don't know. It just depends on the individual, but yeah, uncover that passion and give it a try.
Hey, Robert, when I do this, it means that somebody has a question, and I need to, when you're done with your point, I'm going to move in. Randy knows that's what I mean. Or I do this to tell Randy 1 minute, go get another beer. Hey, Ashley asked this question. Randy mentioned taking the plunge and not being able to come back. Well, Ashley said she took the plunge 2 years ago, and now because of what's going on in the world and, you know, et cetera, her business is halted. And she used the words, I have to go back. And she wants to know what suggestions do we have about going back, whatever that means. I think I know what Ashley means, but what's, you know, getting back into a job.
I would say, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, again, going back to everybody's scenario is different. There's no shame in that. The fact that you can go back, I think you should just take pride in that you do have that talent. Okay, well, wait a minute. I might have to step back into that because of what's happening right now. Because all of a sudden I started this new gig and oh my goodness, COVID-19 happened.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this is one of those dirty little secrets behind the scenes thing, but fear and pride played a pretty good role in my life too, some years back. I had my own business doing this, and there were a few good years. And in my role as an entrepreneur, I would provide the services that I do now for Goodwill. Although at that point, I was a consultant, so I charged the individual hourly or a block of hours to try to assist them. So it's the same work that I was doing, except I had to go out and sell the work. I had to provide the service, the billing, and had to do all of that. But then as the economy started to die in 2009 or 10, my business crashed. You would think it would blossom because everybody needed my services, but the business model wasn't such that it was sustainable. You know, how is somebody going to pay you if they don't have a job and there are no jobs available? And so between that and some health and other financial issues, I was fearful. I was fearful about the future of how am I going to provide for myself or anybody that's dependent on me. And so there was the fear and the uncertainty of the future. I knew that I could land on my feet somewhere, but where the kind of the fear came in was I loved what I did. I love it. And where else could I find a home where I could do that on somebody's payroll? And it meant maybe being a recruiter. And you know what, I could hold my nose and go do that. It wouldn't be my first choice. I love what I do. So where could I fit in? Yeah. But back to your point of how can I plug back into corporate America? A lot of folks have been down your very same path. I've had a number of clients that have come to me and said, every, and I'll be sexist here, but every man's dream is to be self-determination, is to have self-determination. And I've never once, and I've dealt with a lot of guys that have had their own business and it's failed for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. None of them has said to me that I wish I hadn't done it. They've all said they've learned a lot about themselves, and life is a journey. And sometimes it's a matter of figuring out where you don't want to be. Right. That's why as a kid, your mom says, try your vegetables. You never know. You might like them, right? Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? You get old enough, you're like, I don't have to do that anymore. I've tried. But there's so much of this whole fear thing and the uncertainty. Yeah, you can make the change and go back. And I was so blessed that Goodwill came to me about 7, 8, 9 years ago and said, hey, we're going to start this professional center. It's stuff right up your alley. We'd love to have you be involved if you're open to it. And so,
you know, and another thing that comes to mind as I hear you sharing this, and in the context to Ashley's question, is that you've got to put a positive mindset. You got to have a positive mindset about I'm going to make this change. Not I have to make this change. Not I'm being forced to make this change. Not, oh, you know, this sucks. You've got to have a positive mindset about it. So you make a very deliberate decision that what you're doing today, if in fact is not the thing you need to be doing, then you make a very deliberate decision. Okay, you know, the best thing, the thing I want to do today is find an organization who needs my skills, and let me get into a conversation with them about how I can bring those skills to their company and create value. Positive mindset rather than woe is me, this sucks, etc. That doesn't help you. That actually will make the journey more painful.
it can, and not knowing the future makes it even doubly painful because you don't know when it's going to end.
Right.
When is this over? But back to who was the question?
Ashley asked that question.
Ashley asked that. So just as starting a business or choosing to do business with somebody usually entails somebody that knows, likes, and trusts you, what I would do is if I'm looking at re-entering corporate America, then I would look to the relationships I already have and build on those. Here again, I had a relationship with the folks at Goodwill based on some of the volunteerism that I had done and just in general, just going to the same meetings all the time.
Right.
And so there was that already established level of rapport. Then it was a matter of saying, okay, this is the right bus to be on. Remember Good to Great, the book Good to Great. Goodwill and its mission are the right bus for me to be on, but was there the right seat on that bus for me? And while I wish it would have happened 5 or 6 years before that, it wasn't time for that to happen. But when the time was there, just like Coach Cooper for Ohio State, who could never beat Michigan, he would talk about luck. And I hate Michigan. Anybody here from Michigan? I'm an Ohio State Buckeye guy, right? But
I apologize to everybody who's offended by Randy's word of hate. Well, let's go back.
Let's strike that from the record. But Coach Cooper used to say luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
Luck. So why is that guy lucky all the time? Such good things. Well, you know what?
Yep.
Not always luck. And so it does take effort. It takes work. And that, Robert, leads me to a question for you.
All righty.
Talking about making changes, were there any specific things you did, for example, an assessment or informational interviewing or something somewhat structured and somewhat formal that helped kind of direct you in another path?
Well, from the self-assessment, it was more of a self-assessment, but not one that was ever conducted for me. I had to, again, I had to reevaluate myself. And before I went to talk to somebody, not just freewheeling it and say, well, I might be able to do that. I had to really think about it. And so I did my due diligence, as most people do. You dive into the job, into the company that maybe you're looking into, look and see what they've been doing. Oh, I didn't know so-and-so was working there. And maybe inquire of some of your friends, people that you might know, and put the word out there in confidence with them that you're considering that, and they'll give you a little insight as to the company that you might be considering. But I do think that use your networking. Networking, there's a way to do it right and there's a way to do it wrong. And I think you should always hold on to those connections no matter where you go to. I mean, I've got connections from 24 years ago that are still here in Winston-Salem, and I'll call upon them and ask them questions about certain companies that I'm calling on in my job now. So it's come back to just benefit me. Oh yeah, Robert, why don't you stop on by? And they'll introduce me. It might be the president of a company. They'll say, yeah, Robert, come on in. And it opens the door for me. I would say, do your due diligence. Just go in there. And also too, just be prepared to be upfront and honest in the interview process. HR directors, I know, I loved your show the other day and you were talking about resume writing and so forth, what people look for and what they go, and they just toss it off to the side. But if you get that opening, you have to take advantage of it. But I think sincerity goes a long way. I know when I made job changes, I was just sincere with them. I remember, and I'll use this as an example.
Yeah.
I remember going into the banking business and they looked at my resume and so forth and they said, God, you've got a lot of talents. You've managed staffs of 75 to 125 people. You've done this, you've done that, but what about from banking standpoint? And I looked her directly in the eye and I said, well, I'm going to be real honest with you, Miss So-and-so. I have a hard time balancing my checkbook, to be quite frank with you. And she just laughed. I said, but I'm willing to learn. And I think my talents can travel here. And 2.5 hours later, what turned out to be like a 15-minute interview turned into a 2.5-hour interview. And yeah, the rest was history. So, that's your one story. I know you asked me earlier to recant a funny story in my travels, and that was one of them.
Yeah. So Robert, and for Randy, I'm gonna share. Pamela dropped in the Q&A. that she's known Randy for a long time. I had no idea about your work-life story. And the reason, and she says, thanks for sharing and, overcoming fear and moving forward with your passion with boldness and humility. Okay. And the reason why I share that is because that's important. It really is important for us. What I refer to is to peel back the layers, be a little vulnerable, share with people, let them know who you are as a person. Within reason, there is a thing called TMI, and you guys don't need to know about all that other stuff I don't want to tell you about, but you've got to peel back the layers. Vulnerability creates relationships. Relationships open doors.
Yeah.
Yep.
Robert, you talked earlier, talked a moment ago, and Teddy did too, about relationships. And I think something that happens, and I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I think we all are to some degree. We get so focused on, okay, here's my job, here's what I need to do, here's my family, here's my social life, here's this and that. That network that we leverage to help us land this job that we're in, don't let it die. Too often, I think people just let it go. And LinkedIn is a good example. Yeah, I started my LinkedIn page 6 years ago, and I have a few connections, but I don't know any of them. Whatever. So keep it alive. I guess that's the thing. Don't lose the momentum. Teddy?
Yep. No, it's 30 minutes after the hour. I just want to remind everyone that you're on the Randy Wooden and Teddy Burriss Lunchtime Show. And our guest is Robert Garcia, and the conversation from Robert's perspective is about career transition, going from being, this is not Robert's story, but going from being a cat wrestler to a professional dog toenail clipper or whatever, changing your life and becoming something more successful. That wasn't your story, Robert.
Okay.
So Randy, what other thoughts do you have you put up together to poke into Robert's mind?
Well, and we talked a little about informational interviewing, but let's go back to some of the concerns. What are some, in your view, and you've interviewed a lot of people too, Robert, who themselves were making a career change. What are some of the common denominators? What are some of those common drivers that really kind of light a fire under somebody and makes them say, hey, you know what? I need to make a change now. This is the impetus for doing it. What are some of those, what I call thorns in the paw that you need to get, or pebbles in the shoe that need to be removed so that you can have a fulfilling life?
Oh, well, according to the interviewing process,
I don't have all day. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
You got to be pretty much to the point, but I think people are going to read right through you when you interview, especially if you're changing jobs, because they go, why are you taking up my time? You're coming into this. Why did you come here when you used to do this? Why aren't you over there in that industry? I truly believe you've got to show it, and it shows. You've done a lot of interviews before. I have too. You can probably spot without having to read somebody's resume what they're standing for. Are they just looking for a filler? Are they just looking for a gap filler till they find the next thing? Passion, look to see what they're passionate about, see what they bring to the table, see if they did do their due diligence about your company, and go, wow, we can really use a person like that. Oh, and what other things can you bring to the table? One of the things for me, of course, was being bilingual. You mentioned that to me 20 years ago, Randy, and I never even thought about it back then, about being bilingual. And why don't you put that to work? And it never dawned on me because, of course, coming from Texas, everybody was pretty much bilingual over there. And it exploded here in North Carolina. And I tell young people all the time that are bilingual, oh, my goodness, take advantage of it. But, yeah, I think you should, when you get that opportunity, take advantage of it quickly. But do know that these HR people, they're looking for you to slip, not intentionally, but they can spot if you're sincere or not.
So sincerity, yeah. And just to add to that, one of the things, and Teddy may do the same when coaching job seekers, when you conduct informational interviewing, you're not only establishing rapport with somebody, but also you're learning where the landmines are. If I make a change, here are the things I need to understand. So it helps you as a job seeker to know not only what you can do, what is feasible for you given your education and your experience, but also would you like to do it? Is it something you'd enjoy doing? And when you get into the interview, then you can share anecdotally what your journey has looked like. Here's why not only do I feel that I'm certainly qualified, but here's why I'm passionate about this. This is what I've discovered in talking with people, really looking through and saying what's important to me as a person, both personally and professionally. And if it's genuine and you've really done the work, it'll come out.
Yes.
It'll come out.
All day long. If somebody's genuine and that's what you want representing you, like I represent my agency. I'm one of the many faces of our agency, and it's always got to be very upfront and sincere and honest. It just people will spot a fake and a mile away.
Yeah.
I agree, Randy. If you're sincere in transitioning, I spent 35 years as an IT guy. I don't even know if you knew that, Robert. Again, very purposeful transition. Today, I am very sincere and somewhat emphatic about how much I love doing what I do. And when people see that and feel that and hear that, that you love doing what they need to have done, that's powerful.
Yep.
Here's the deal, guys. You make decisions subjectively. That's how we go through life. It's how we feel. It's that sense, and we validate it with logic. Well, we got a special price on it, or well, it's going to make me look better, or whatever. But we back it up with logic, and so subjectivity, whether in buying or in hiring, is pretty important. And again, you're not the only guy they're considering. When you think about it, Robert, you weren't the only one that they were looking at, and you were far from the lowest price model on the market, and yet they extended the offer to you, almost, I think, probably figuring you weren't going to take it because you had been here, but the dollars were there. Can you talk through a little bit some of the process that you went through personally as you looked at, okay, if I make it, what are the trade-offs and how that played out on your dining room table one afternoon?
Yeah, I remember one time on a dining room table from 8:30 in the morning to 3:45 in the afternoon, and didn't move other than to go to the men's room. But just looking at it, I mean, there's some sacrifices. There were sacrifices I had to determine. But I didn't realize, I mentioned earlier about a budget. I didn't realize how unbudgeted I was and how I could live with certain things, or how I could live with some things, but just cut them back a little bit. Seeing where I could move some money around, see where I could move some bills around, what I needed to do. You just have to reevaluate and ask yourself those honest questions. I mean, if you're used to living a lavish lifestyle and you don't want to come off that mountain, well, okay, that's totally up to you. But I have not lost anything. I'll tell you that much. If anything, I've gained in my experiences. I've not lost a thing. Yeah, sure, there might have been that, okay, maybe I didn't get a chance to play golf twice in a weekend at the beginning. Maybe I only played once, or maybe I had to skip a weekend, or whatever the case might be. You look at those things. Your shopping, whatever the case might be. Of course, with families, that assessment is totally different because you have to take into consideration. I remember doing some interviews, Randy, with some of the folks over at Goodwill, because they were at that point where their kids were just going to college. And they had to make those hard decisions. What do I do? So, and that's understandable. So that's a whole different ball game right there. But nonetheless, I would say just know what you want to do, be passionate about it, and be honest to yourself. If you're not an extrovert, there's no need to go looking for an extrovert kind of base job. Don't go put yourself in a position where you're going to fail. And I wanted to touch base on, you talked about networking and people that you've known in the past. I think one of the important things is that you don't forget those people. That when they call upon you, that you follow through with things. It seems like every month I'll have one or two people that maybe call me up and ask me for something, and I'll follow up, or I'll go make a call for them, because in the long run, you'll get it threefold coming back to you.
Robert, you use the word sacrifices, and I used to use that word as well. But then you ended that statement with, you lost nothing. In fact, you know you've gained.
Right.
That's powerful. When I quit my corporate job to start this business, I had so many people say, "Oh my God, Teddy, are you going to be able to do this? What are you going to have to sacrifice?"
Right.
Now I admit I gave up cable TV, okay, because I didn't watch that much TV anyway to justify $100 a month. Okay. Yeah. I didn't go out and buy a brand new pickup truck, and I didn't buy another motorcycle. I didn't buy a new boat. I didn't buy a new lakefront property or mountain property. And I'm actually okay with that. And because as I'm certain you can testify to as well, the ability for us to go out and do what we truly love to do is far more rewarding than owning another lakefront property, mountain property, new motorcycle, new pickup truck. I'm gonna get a new pickup truck one day. It's all that is materialistic things that really are not that important. By the way, side story: without having lakefront, beachfront, mountain, chalet, and airplane and a boat is okay. I don't need that. You know why? I got peeps that I know who have that.
Randy lets you fly on his Cessna.
We're not allowed to talk about Cessna, dude. We do Lear jets, man.
I don't know. I keep leaving messages for him, but he never returns my calls.
Right.
Hey, Robert, I appreciate you coming by. If you can hang with us for a little bit,
sure.
We're going to go around some ideas, and if we get some questions of hearing some common themes that Dave Ramsey talks about, seeing some other terms being thrown out in there. The Ohio State University. My apologies.
Ohio State University.
Hang on. Teddy, take it for just a second, will you?
Something tells me he's going to go get his Buckeye
I know
hat
he's
or something.
He's going to get his chop cut. Hey, so Robert, I'm right there with you. I made that very deliberate change in December 15th, 2010. No, I pulled the trigger on November 15th, 2010. And I wrote a letter to my boss, said I'm quitting. And I said, I'm going to go start my own business. And I went on a journey to figure out what that was going to be. And it's been by far, by no means easy. By no means easy. And I don't use the word sacrifices, but I cast away expenses that I no longer needed to have. But it has been by far the greatest choice I've ever made, is to make this decision. Whether it's going to business as Burriss Consulting, doing what I'm doing, or getting hired by some organization that also wants to pay me some ludicrous amount of money, in my mind, doesn't make any difference. It was making that transition.
Yeah. But you said it earlier about, forgetting a birthday, having that wonderful birthday party for your child and making it memorable. That will last a lifetime. A boat, a plane, or a mountain house or something like this. Yeah.
Another thought here, especially for younger folks that are coming out of school and having a hard time. There are a lot of them, and there may be some parents of those young, recent college grads, and that's the fear, the fear of failure, the fear of whatever. And I think we all have that, and fear of the unknown. But what I try to tell young folks coming out of school is, you know what, you're young enough to screw up, not just once, but twice, 3 or 4. And again, life's a journey, and sometimes you just learn as you go, and you say, well, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to do that again. And as we begin to get older, we do get, to your point, more financial responsibilities. But while you're younger and you've got that freedom, take that step out of the airplane. Go for it. I didn't, and people ask me, because I had a decent job and whatever, and this was back in the early 2000s. had a pretty decent job, but really wasn't fulfilling. And there was no guarantee of success, but I told people I didn't want to wake up at age 60 and look back and wonder, why didn't I go for it?
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm, let's just say, a few months shy of 60, again, you look back and there's things, yeah, sure, I could have done things differently had I known now what I know. Well, whatever, had I known then what I know now. But but overall, the process and that, I think that helped shape who we are. And I had a good friend of mine named Tom, during the time when, I was going through a lot of the financial strife and everything from health to family and just a lot of things going on. And I'll always remember we were sitting at a local diner back when we could meet at a local diner face to face, right? And he says, and it's been said many times, he says that, failure is an occurrence. It's not a personality trait. And that whole thing about, I felt like a failure. I felt like a failure. And it took somebody who isn't family, who has no dog in the hunt to say, hang on a second, let's look at this objectively. Okay. And that really helps set things straight in my mind that, you know what? And you can look at Abe Lincoln, you can look at Edison, you look at all these guys that have been out there and have done really cool things in history, but they didn't right out of the gate hit the home run. And again, sometimes it's a trial and error. And if you're afraid to try, then you've got to be okay with staying stuck in that rut. But if you'd never try it, you'll never know. And whether it's that bird leaving the nest or whatever, you want to use as an example. I hope today's helped to inspire some folks. Teddy, you had something you wanted to
well,
add
let me
there?
add another perspective.
Yeah.
Because I know people who have jobs that I wouldn't have. And I know people, I know this one lady who has a job and she does payroll. She's been doing payroll, Lordy. Because I came down here in 1997 and I was a part of hiring her in 1997. Okay. So she's been doing payroll for this company since 1997. Now, and most people would call her a payroll clerk. I don't. And she works roughly 8 to 9 hours a day, every day, pretty routine. And her world has changed because you can imagine processing payroll over the last 20 years is significantly different than it was way back then.
Yeah.
And, and she and I, are friends. We talked about, my career change, my, starting my business, taking this quote unquote risk, all that stuff. And I asked her, I said, do you ever have a desire to go do anything different? And she said, no. And here's why. Two very deliberate perspectives that work great for her and probably work great for lots of other people if they think about it this way. Number one, she has a rich family life outside of work, a rich community outside of work. And she knows that. She has a rich tribe outside of work. Actually, has a rich tribe in work as well. Okay. So when she leaves the office, she goes to another world that is really rich in lots of ways, personally. Mm-hmm. Number two, she is the lady who gets the paycheck to thousands of people every week. They rely on her, and she knows that, and she feels an obligation to make sure that she can do everything in her power to get those checks. I remember during some hurricane, tornado, world problem we had a few years ago, many years ago, where we couldn't get UPS to take checks to Florida. She was willing to get in her car and drive to Florida to take those checks. Mm-hmm. So you think about career transition, you need to have the desire and you need to put it all in context. Maybe the best thing to do is for you to keep doing what you're doing because you love it and you have a rich life in and outside of work.
And to add to that, sometimes too, we don't want to necessarily sacrifice the dollars. We still want to keep the plane and the boat, but we don't want to take a vow of poverty. So what you may do is say, and I just had this discussion with a client the other day. They're at a fork in the road. Do I make a change? If so, you know, because they're at that stage. And one of the factors to consider is being pragmatic about it and saying, well, look, where am I most marketable? Where can I earn the income that can help me stay where I am? And then, you know what? Go volunteer. Go do something in your off time that really lights the fire, because that way you can still have the passion of doing the things that are meaningful to you, but you have the knowledge, the background, and the skill that can command a reasonable income, so that you don't, it's not a one or the other. Gee, I'm going to be poor, but I'm going to like what I do. No, you can still make decent money, but now instead of going home and you know, watching TV all night, now you go do some volunteer work, and you get kind of the balance. And that, for a lot of folks, could be the answer. Yeah. If, to your point, the lady in payroll, she likes what she does. And it's almost like a marriage too. Yeah. You know, sometimes companies look at you and they say, oh, you've been there for what, 25 years? What are you, lazy? Are you complacent? And that's a concern, because now everybody moves every couple, 3 years. But if you look at it from a marriage, Teddy, you've been married for, let's just say, a few years. Is that 42 years?
I've been married to my first wife for 41 years.
But see, with a marriage, it's look at it like a career or a job. You don't change just because you want to keep moving up the ladder. If you love it and you're happy where you are and it's fulfilling, you stay with it. And that's what your lady in accounting and payroll is doing. She loves it. The pay is fair. She likes the surroundings, the people she deals with. She loves how what she does impacts other people. So for her, that has a lot of intrinsic value, as well as the financial. And I'm sure, having been there for that long, she's, you know, gone up the pay scale.
Yeah. You know, there's another. Go ahead, Robert.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, and to sum it up, Con, quality of life can't be measured with a dollar sign. Yeah. It sounds like to me she's got quality of life. So she's just rich in other areas. She's doing it. She's being passionate about it, but then she's got other things happening. And like you said, doing volunteer work, doing something that makes you feel good. I think that is so important for everybody, is to just, and also, and I meant to mention this earlier too, you know, if you're thinking about changing, also too, take a look at the benefit programs that jobs are offering, you know, especially young people like ourselves, Randy, that are, you know, moving up there.
Not me.
You want to take a look at the bennies, you know, make sure that you are covered. You know, if you've got that, literally that insurance, you don't have to worry about other things and see that opportunity. But if you go jump at something and their bennies are 60% of what you used to have, well, you just basically shot yourself in the foot in some respects. But yeah, quality of life, you can't measure it.
Yeah, I tell people that you measure the compensation of this job or of this potential job in lots of different ways. And it's not just salary. It's not just benefits. It's not just, you know, vacation and sick leave and 401k. There, you know, what's the opportunity to grow? What's the opportunity to learn? What's the opportunity to give back? What's the opportunity? And am I going to be able to spend time with my family more? I actually have a good friend of mine who decided to quit his job when he looked at the cost of him to go to work, because he had to drive 60 miles one way in 2-hour traffic. He had to buy thousands of dollars of suits. He had to eat breakfast, lunch, and often dinner in downtown DC. And you add all that up, and that's a whole lot of money. And when he looked at that cost, that was the trigger. And he was ready to do this financially and age-wise. He retired.
Yeah. Nice position to be in. Hey, we've got a handful of minutes left. Robert, any final thoughts?
Just go after it. Go after what's passionate to you. Take a hard look. It's okay. It's okay to go jump off the high board if all you've been doing is jumping off the low board. It's okay. Somebody will be there to help you out. Great friends like Randy, like yourself, and now I've got a new friend in Teddy. But wait a minute, I do want to mention, you guys don't look nothing like that advertising for the Teddy and Randy show.
It's because I let the beard grow, dude.
What? No, but there's this guy in a leather outfit
It's
that
just
don't
the
look
beard,
nothing
man.
like Randy. But anyway, that's another story. Yeah, just be passionate. Yeah, chase your passion. You know, quality of life, all that good stuff. I know that sounds kind of sappy, but it means a lot. In the long run, it means a great deal. And thank you very much for having me.
How can people reach you if they want to reach you?
They can dial 336-403-9328.
9328.
Yes, sir. And I'll be more than happy to talk to them. Also, too, if there's something I can help them with in regards to our agency, or questions in regards to healthcare. I'm not a clinician, but I know a lot of clinicians. I know a lot of people in the industry, and I can be that one contact, and I can point you in the right direction.
Robert,
speaking of volunteers, you said something about going and volunteering. At Trellis, we love volunteers. So there's a shameless plug for our volunteer department. We'd love, if you're looking to volunteer somewhere, give us a call at Trellis. We love our volunteers.
Absolutely.
Randy, let's announce who our speaker is. Our guest is next week. Do you have that?
Is it Lida?
It's Lida, and I know I'm going to make a dumb mistake, and because I always do. Citroen, Citroen.
Correct.
And this is going to be pretty cool. Lida is going to come and bring a conversation about very relevant, meaningful work. Meaningful work.
Personal branding and all of that.
I'm sorry. I said it wrong. Personal branding. I said it wrong. I apologize. So it's going to be a really cool conversation. I've known Lida for a while. We talked a little bit about, her joining us, and personal branding. I apologize. Not meaningful work. Personal branding is critical, which is exactly why Randy shines his head, and I have a hairbrush here to make sure my beard is brushed. And I'm being a little, satirical here, but it's important, and this is going to be a really cool conversation.
Yeah, we need to get better writers. See, somebody wrote that script for Teddy that said personal or whatever it was.
That's because I didn't have my notes in front of me in the right place. So again, executive producer.
Executive producer. Hey, quick tip from Randy and a quick tip from Teddy. We got about 4 or 5 minutes left. This is a fun one. I'll make it quick. You ever get into a conversation with somebody and they keep talking too long? They don't even breathe. They breathe through their ears and they keep talking. And next thing you know, they talk forever and blah, 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 blah. And they're nervous and they keep talking. And there's a candidate. Now they've talked themselves out of a job because they won't shut up. All right. So 3 quick tips on how to know if you might be talking too long during an interview. Because a lot of times the employer will just sit there and let you continue and not really interrupt you. One thing is, if they nod their head, that usually means they follow you. They follow what you're saying. So if they're nodding their head like that, keep on going. When they start to make sounds, that usually means that they're with you and they're kind of getting close to being done with it. But when they come out with actual words, okay, Robert, okay, Robert, I got you. Okay, good. That makes sense. I'm with you. Right. Okay, sure. When they speak words, that should tell you that they, in their mind, have heard all they need to hear, and you need to be quiet. That's a tip in the interview process. And I'll tell you, if you're on the phone, you're ever in a room with somebody, and all they're on, yep, right, yep, sure, right. Obviously, this guy on this end isn't wanting to talk anymore. So don't talk yourself out of the interview. Nod the head, sound, words. Keep that in mind. Teddy, you got one?
I got a different one, Randy.
All right.
Because I usually wear a Fitbit, and my Fitbit died this morning, so I got to get it charged up. But before it died, it popped up an alert on my phone. And I'm not promoting Fitbit. That's not my statement. But what it said to me, I was like, dang, that's smart. And what it said to me was this. And I can't remember all the details, but it basically said, do deep breathing exercises for 30 seconds a few times a day. And I'm telling you, I've been practicing that for a while now, just every now and then stop. do deep breathing exercises. And by the way, deep breathing means make your gut even bigger, Teddy. Spread your chest out, open your rib cage up, and fill those lungs. And used to be I could only hold my breath when I did that for 10 or 15 seconds. Now I can get to 20 or 25 seconds. Deep breathing exercises, people, are good for your heart and all of that other stuff that hangs out inside your chest wall.
Dr. Burriss, that's an amazing. Thank you, Doctor.
Robert, again, thanks for coming, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. You guys are something else. I enjoyed watching your other shows also. Great work.
Hey, check us out on LinkedIn, Randy Wooden, Wooden with a D, Wooden, Teddy Burriss, 2 R's, 2 S's. Everybody knows Teddy, right? Teddy.
Everybody. I know him now. Yeah.
All right, folks. Next week, Lyda Citron will be with us, and the conversations about personal branding. If you have an idea of a subject that you would like us to talk about, all you got to do is hit up Randy, hit up Teddy, and let us know. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great rest of the afternoon.
Wear your mask.
See you guys.
Wash your hands.
Bye, guys.